Welcome to the Being Champions podcast. In this podcast, we'll unlock and discover the key elements that defines being a champion coach and dive into the principles that create a culture where everyone thrives and wants to be a part of. Now, let's welcome our hosts, Coach Jared Russ, Coach Mike Hibbs, and Coach Matt Booth. Well, welcome back to the Being Champions podcast. And guys, it's great sitting back down at this table, the three of us. We've actually had the privilege the past couple weeks, some individual interviews. Trevor Reagan from the Learner Lab, Brett White from B Leaders, Don Bellamaris from the Collaboratory. So I'm just excited to be back at the table with Mike Hibbs and Jared Russ. And guys, I wanted to kick off this conversation, and we're going to center this around culture, but I wanted to read something from one of my favorite books. It's Boys in the Boat, and just the essence that this statement catches, like it's crazy. So I'm just going to read this real quick, guys. It says, you become part of something bigger, larger than yourself. You find something that you did not know you possessed. There are mystical moments of pride, elation, and love for each other. Moments you'll tell your grandchildren. Moments that bring you closer to your maker. Forming bonds of trust and affection. A place where we all become one. It's a rare thing. It's sacred. It's exquisite. A sense of exhilaration. It's why we play. And
guys, just you reading that gets me fired up.
Exactly.
Like I'm ready to roll.
Yeah, it's crazy. And think about that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. It's why we play. It's sacred. It's exquisite. It's exhilarating. So, Jared, think about that. Like culture. When you think of that word culture, what jumps to your head?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate brotherhood, like the ultimate opportunity to have something special that maybe nobody else has quite the same. Like in the quote that you just read. Mystical moments of pride, elation, and love for each other. Moments that you will tell your grandchildren. Like these are memories that you're building because of choices that you made to go and do something together, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think when I hear the statement, it's really this whole concept is culture is a feeling, right? What does it feel like when you walk into your program? What does it feel like when you walk into a business? What does it feel like when you walk into a school? It's capturing that feeling. So I try to challenge people, and I always say, culture is a living, breathing thing. It's going to form one way or other. And so it's being intentional and figuring out, what is the culture we want to build. So just thinking about that, how do we define this thing? It's a buzzword, this whole word of culture, but how do we really define what is culture?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that immediately comes to mind when you're talking about culture happens no matter what. And I think that's where something's
for good or bad.
It can
right?
be scary.
Yeah.
We talk about impacts not being neutral. We talk about
Yeah.
positive impacts or negative impacts, and you're going to pick one or the other. I think if you're not intentionally trying to build positive, cohesive culture, you're going to unintentionally build really negative, really problematic cultures that you don't even realize you're forming just because of what's being allowed to happen.
Right.
And so first and foremost, if we want to talk about, making something special, it has to be very intentional. Mm-hmm. Has to have purpose, has to have reason behind it. Because if there's reason, there's purpose, we can explain why we're doing things. We can get people to agree with us with the why. And if one person agrees with the why and then another person agrees with the why, now we're 3, then we're 4, then we're 8, and we're all charging at this why together, and all of a sudden you've built something that's like, wow, when I come into this space with this group of people that believe in this thing, there's this natural energy that's going on that's so positive, and it draws you in and makes you want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I think when I think of that word, I think of the simple definition as how we do things here.
Yeah.
Right, and establishing what are the behaviors we want, what defines us, how do we do things, right? And again, it comes back to this whole idea of how intentional we are. Because again, guys, it's really easy. We can say, this is our vision, here are our values, here are our standards, but how do we make this come to life? How do we make it go from the wall and bring it into existence where you walk out, right? If I'm an outside observer, right? And I come watch your practice. How do I know what your culture is? How do I know what your values are? Like, why is that such a hard thing, you think, to establish? Again, we talk about culture all the time, but why is it such a hard thing to maintain and develop and sustain this culture?
I think because we get sidetracked, and
Yeah.
it's so easily with all the distractions, especially nowadays, about winning or scholarships or money and NIL and all this stuff, that it distracts us from really what our goal should be, and we lose focus on our why. And so that's why we always have to remind ourselves what that is. We always have to take inventory our own selves
Yeah.
and see. And a lot of times, winning disguises that.
Yep.
And so you don't then look at yourself and look at your team and say, hey, we're slipping here or we're slipping there, because, hey, we just won 3 games.
Yep.
We just beat the best team in the area. Hey, we're good.
Yep.
But you could see there's something not there. There's something missing, and you aren't. And it's detail. It's attention to detail. And a lot of times we get caught up on the big picture.
Yep.
And forget about all the little minute details that are always so important. Don't sweat the small stuff. Oh yes, you better sweat the small stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what's going to make or break that culture.
Totally.
Right. I mean, and like you said though, if I go watch somebody practice or somebody watches mine, I should know exactly what they are about.
Yeah.
At least after the second time, right? I mean, and if I can't do that, then there's something wrong with my culture, right?
Yeah.
And my why. And I've got to go back to that and figure out why am I doing this and what am I trying to get out of this with my team?
Yeah. I think something that just kicked into my head, just thinking about, listening to you guys, is we think that culture is like this switch that we turn on and off.
Yeah.
We've got a basketball culture, we've got a football culture, we've got a soccer culture, we've got a campus culture. We sometimes forget when we're building cultures, it's not just asking someone to adopt and believe in the culture that we have that makes it difficult how we deliver it, if they understand or not. We have to remember that the athlete is coming from so many other cultural environments.
Yeah.
They've got a
Great
culture
point.
in their home.
Yep.
They've got a culture in their daily lifestyle with their family, with their friends. We have all of these different cultures that we're trying to align and get buy-in with. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we're just like, but this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like, you're on the team, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And we forget about, we've got an 18-year-old boy that plays for us that's been doing it different for 16 years.
Yeah.
And, we've had him for 1 season, and we can't figure out why the heck getting that player to align is more difficult than maybe a different player to align. It's like, man, culture is everywhere, and it's always forming, whether it's intentional or unintentional.
Yeah, actually, when you say that about the behaviors, there's a great sports performance coach, Owen Eastwood, wrote an amazing book called Belonging, and he talks about just what you were saying, Jared, is 70% of human behavior comes from the environment they're from, right? And like you were just saying, like, what's going on in their home life, what's going on in school. And I think what the problem is, like you said, we have these expectations as coaches, like, oh, everyone should just align because we said this is how we're going to do it.
Because we said so.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we
We're
said
the
so.
coach.
That command and
makes
control
sense.
where,
Yeah.
hey, this is how we're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because I said so as coach. But what about, Owen Eastwood in that book, Belonging? It's about building relationships,
Yes.
right? And how can we make everyone feel like they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, they actually belong in our culture. And it doesn't matter if you're the star player or you're the last guy on the bench. Again, so how do you guys think about that when we're building our culture? How do you get everyone feel like they are valued in this team, no matter what they produce results-wise or any of that stuff? How do we actually build this connection to make everyone feel like they belong?
Okay, well, like you always say, it's not about us, but it starts with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I think the players need to feel that it's not about us.
Yeah.
And so many coaches make it about them, and that really destroys all kinds of culture. So, as you said, it's all about relationships. And like I said last time, my number one thing is trust. So how do you get them to trust you so that then they will buy in and then they'll appreciate the culture that they're a part of?
Yep.
So what steps do you take? Well, I've always, since talking to you, the river effect makes great sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
That you want people to feel relevant, inspired, valued, empowered, and respected. Well, how do you do that? Well, you got to go out of your way.
Yeah.
You have to go and talk with the players individually. You got to see what's going on with them. You got to ask them, hey, how'd it go today? What's up? How'd it go in English class? Or, you okay with your girlfriend today? Just every little thing that you can add, and they will feel then that you care about them. The famous line, they don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Same thing all the time. And if I think that if you care about them as people and not just players, not what can you do for me, but as people, then you can do that across the board from number 1 to number 15 or whatever it is. And a couple years ago, we had a very, very good team, but 5 of the players were way better skill-wise than the rest of them. And when it came down to playoffs, those other kids really didn't play much at all, if at any.
Yeah.
All right. But at the end of the year, when we lost our last game, close game in the regional finals, we went around and had everybody say something. And to a person, even the last person on the team said, I had a great time. I had a great experience. I love this. I never had an experience like that before.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, oh, let's make it like a family. But it's even more than that.
Totally.
It's more special than
It is.
that.
It is more
That's
special.
how cool. Like right now, talking, like I'm getting chills.
Hibbs is all fired up.
I'm getting
right
fired
now.
up.
Yeah.
Come on.
I love it. So guys, like I hear Hibbs talking, I hear everyone getting fired up, right? And you think about our seasons, we always talk about this is a journey, right? And one of the things I love to talk about, and this came out in 1965, Bruce Tuckman came out with this amazing research paper about the stages of team dynamics. And he talked about, every team goes through a forming stage, every team goes through a storming phase, every team goes through norming and performing, right? So if we think about culture and we think about these stages that every team we know is going to go through, right? And then we observe things and we watch things, and we see a lot of coaches want to rush through the forming because, again, they want to get to the tactics. They want to get to the strategy. I think if I get this tactics, I'm going to get the result. But really, it's if you focus on culture in the forming, you're going to get the results. So let's dive into that. The whole idea of forming, storming, norming, performing. How do we sustain our culture when the storm does show up? We're trying to normalize and all this stuff.
It's one of my favorite things that I've seen in a long time when it comes to like the guide for building cultures, because I feel like I've been building cultures for a long time, but didn't realize that I was taking these 4 steps.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so when I read this and when you spoke about it, it was like, holy smokes. Okay. These are all aligning. And as a coach, it's like, okay, the forming aspect. We love the forming stage because the forming stage is the dreamer, right? Yep. We get to dream about, what does it look like if everything went exactly as we want it to go? Yep. And then what are our standards? What are going to be the non-negotiable things that we're going to build into that forming stage? And then what direction can we really start taking this vision? And so once you get to that storming phase, you hope that you don't have to be in the storming phase for very long.
Yeah.
But whatever you form and you say, this is what we're going to be, this is what we're going to stand for, this is what we're going to believe in. When you go into that storming phase, that is when the athlete is going to have some trial and error.
Yeah.
There's going to be some testing of the waters here. Okay, coach said, we're going to be this, and this every single day, every single time we're on the field, every single time we're in the classroom. What happens if we're not, right? Are you willing as a coach to storm?
Yeah.
Are you willing as a coach to push back and say, no, this is what we formed, this is what we stand for, and this is how we're going to move through it, and that's unacceptable behavior, period, because this is what we've identified as important to us. So we went through that tiny storm, right? We're going to have that difficult conversation with that individual player, with that team collectively, whatever it might be. We're going to identify it, we're going to eradicate that decision, and then we're going to move forward, and we're going to normalize what that forming was. So if we can form something that's truly special, explain why we formed it the way we formed it, and then hold players accountable anytime that we might slip, which is my storm, and then normalize how we're going to do things, now performance is going to start showing up. And then all I have to do on a very regular basis is re-emphasize the norm, right? So, a commitment that we are going to make to each other every single day, something we're going to say, something we're going to do at the beginning of practice or beginning of matches, whatever it is, it's a reminder of what we've committed to, what we created in that forming stage, and the normalizing that we've done is now creating results.
Yes.
And so the results are coming because the first 3 stages were really where our focus was, and a result is just the byproduct.
Yeah.
And that's... doesn't get any better.
It doesn't. Michael, I saw you writing some stuff down, so I want to hear from you. But I think we struggle in that storm if we don't spend that time in the forming, right? And everyone's excited in the beginning. Everyone is all bought in. They're gonna listen to you, and like whatever Mike says, like he's like, oh yeah, we're all in. But that storm shows up, and Mike, you were talking about it, like when winning masks a lot of things. And John Madden had the great quote, like, winning is the best deodorant, right? And if we don't spend the time in the forming and being intentional every day with what we're trying to do within this culture, that storm's going to come and we're not going to get out of it. And that's why I think
we're going to stink.
And we're going to stink, And the deodorant's gone, right? And I think back to Daniel's quote where he says it's rare, it's sacred, and it's exquisite, because not every team can even get to Norman or performing. And so, Michael, I saw you writing stuff down, so I know you're all fired up now.
Yeah, and I just say too, and you get to the point then where the coach is not directing that.
Yes.
Then you know you're at the next level, right?
Yes.
When the players are directing
Game changer.
that. Yeah. I mean, that's when you say, okay, we got some going here now, right? It is next level. But I think that sometimes we as coaches get caught up in holding the players accountable and forget about holding ourselves accountable.
Yep.
And I think that is the only way to sustain that culture is if the coach is also accountable. And sometimes that's saying to the guys, hey, you know what? I messed up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Vulnerability.
I'm sorry. That was my bad. That's not on you guys. All right. I'm taking the full responsibility for what happened to it. I didn't prepare us, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I got caught up in us just wanting to win the game, and I forgot about you and your, and the culture that we're trying to create here. Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's really important part of maintaining that culture.
Yeah. And
that's why we started last week with know thyself.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't know that, then how are you going to be true to that?
Mm-hmm.
Famous line by Shakespeare, this above all to thine own self be true. Yep. And it follows as the night the day, thou canst not be false to any man. And that and I tell my students all the time that, okay, so everybody knows the first part. This above all to thine own self be true.
Yep.
But nobody focuses on the second part, which is then you can't be false to anyone else. Mm-hmm. So that's the key, right? Is that you are going to be
Deliver.
True. Right. And you're going to be that person you say you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for the coach in order to maintain that culture.
Yeah. Oh, the connection piece in all of that, right? You're talking about the vulnerability, the connection, the relationship piece. It brings to mind just that building of the culture. You have to have a deeper connection with your players in order to get that deep connection and belief in return.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And sometimes that's a vulnerable story. Sometimes that's something that you can connect on that you've gone through that was painful.
Yeah.
I remember having a year we climbed a sand dune 500 feet up. I had all 35 of my college players were on top of a sand dune looking over the Pacific Ocean. 3 months prior to that conversation, I had lost my dad to cancer. And that was the conversation that we had about the connection and the bond that he and I had about loving sports.
Yeah.
And in that moment, before we went down that mountain, my team and I were one.
Yeah.
And we knew we hadn't played a game yet, and this was about to be something special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's one of those
Fantastic.
things. Yeah, when you say that, it's like, we have to look at something bigger than ourselves, something bigger than just scoreboard, right? So when you have a culture that is inspiring you every day to show up, right? Because again, at 99% of our teams are going to end in a loss, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be something bigger than that. So when you're thinking about that culture and you're trying to get that buy-in, it has to be rooted in something bigger than just a scoreboard. Because again, I see it all the time. Like you win a championship, 2-3 days later, you forget about that feeling. That feeling is gone. Right, but you're not going to forget about the relationships. You're not going to forget about the bus rides. You're not going to forget about every day you showed up with your crew and you're all with this collective vision and you're going after something big. That's what we're going to remember.
Yeah.
I mean, remember we were talking about like 20, 30 years from now. Right. That's when we know
the players
we've built something pretty damn successful and pretty meaningful.
Getting invited to weddings, getting invited to meet newborn children that that's different.
Yeah. And I would say too that my best friends are all because of my relationships through athletics.
Yeah.
Like those are my closest friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also the kids who reach out to me all the time are my players.
It's the best.
Right. There's no greater feeling than that.
No.
Because of what they are thankful.
Yeah.
For being a part of that team, being a part of that culture. Right. And what you're doing, like what Jarrett was doing by telling that story, it humanizes us.
Yes.
A lot of times we like to put ourselves up here and the players down here, and it's always like, oh well, we can't say this around coach or can't do this, all that, right?
Yeah.
So it just humanizes you and say, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Yeah, I love Cody Royal talks about that. Like coaching is the most human endeavor you'll ever partake in. It's humans working with humans, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those, the vulnerability, it's the connection, it's the relationship. I mean, that's how we drive success. That's how we get the culture we want. And again, it's going to form itself if we don't pay attention to what we're actually doing.
Yeah.
Right? It's just one of those things, like the intentionality and in the belief that we're doing something beyond ourselves. That's how you form a culture. That's how we do things here.
I think we came up with something today, talking about our impact never being neutral.
Yeah.
The impact on our culture is never neutral.
Right. It's either good or bad.
We're either improving it or we are hurting it.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
we have to be intentional.
Right. And it goes back to us, responding or reacting.
Yes.
Because that's going to really fire that up one way or the other. If you're responding, it's going to create that better bond. And if you're not and you're reacting, it's going to destroy and start eating holes into that culture.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And we're kind of running short on time. So I was wondering if you guys, any closing thoughts, any things you want to leave with our coaches as we wrap up?
For me, if you're going to work on any one thing, it's culture. I would literally give everything else up. Stats, tactics, skills, you name it. Work on the complete player, work on the relationship, the human being, build the culture first. Everything else will overachieve even without the focus on it.
Yeah.
Because the culture is going to support all of it.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great point. Great point. I'd like to just kind of say a quote here by Goethe. He's a famous writer who wrote Faust, German writer, which is the deal with the devil. Mm-hmm. But this is a great quote. Treat a man as he appears to be and you make him worse than he is. But treat him as if he already is what he potentially could be, and you make him what he should be. And I think too many times we get caught up in defining or labeling our players and focusing on what they can't do.
Yeah.
Like I remember getting so frustrated with college coaches who came to recruit my players. Well, he's not tall enough. Well, he's not strong enough. Well, he can't handle the ball well. I'm like, why are you looking at the things you can't do? Look at all the things you can do. And he's a really good player because of that.
Yeah.
You can work on the other things.
Yeah.
But I think the same thing happens for us, right? We have to see what's best in our players to get them to go to the next level.
Yeah.
With us.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, guys, I think about, and I think we brought it up a little bit, is sports is the greatest life teacher if you teach it the right way, right?
Yeah.
So I always go back to this concept of if building a culture that goes beyond, and we say it all the time, go beyond the scoreboard, beyond the results. Remember, this is about people, right? So what we're trying to do, what we're trying to drive towards, what we're striving for every day is to build that culture, like Mike, you were saying, that river effect, where everyone feels relevant, inspired, valued, empowered, and respected. You do that, guess what? We produce wins far bigger than any championship, any scoreboard, because we create something pretty damn special. And that's what we should strive for every day.
Absolutely.
And to that.
And as I think of that, like I just wanted to pose this last challenge to our coaches again, is that whatever you're struggling with, with your culture? Why is it so hard? Hit us up. We're here for you again. And we just appreciate you guys spending some time, 30 minutes listening to this podcast. We'll be back next week. We can't wait to jump on for our next conversation. So again, thanks for listening to the Being Champions podcast.